Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about the belief bias, which basically describes how we all have beliefs and we're more likely to believe conclusions that align with our belief systems than those without.
Even if they're illogical.
Yeah, it's a form of confirmation bias. And so an example of this might be like, pelicans are a bird. All birds fly, therefore pelicans fly. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. And it's like, well, no, actually, all birds don't fly. But because you have this,
sounds plausible, though.
Yeah, but because it sounds plausible, and in our heads, almost every bird, that we look at flies, except for things like penguins, for example. We just have this initial instinctive reaction of like, that makes sense. And we don't even actually give it the critical thought because it makes so much sense right up front to us, even if it's wrong.
Yeah, it drives me crazy when people do that.
Yeah.
It's lazy, I think. It's cognitively lazy because you don't analyze your thoughts at all. You just go with whatever sounds plausible.
Yeah. And it's normal. It's normal to do. It's one of our brain's shortcuts, actually. It lets us make decisions really quick. Because that's sometimes what our brains need to do. But it gets us in trouble sometimes because sometimes those decisions are based on faulty information. It's just we haven't given it the thought that we need to. And so you can basically recognize when you're doing this, if you have a visceral agreement, if you're just like, yes, this makes sense, then that's a key to.
Yeah, what I do is I'm like, why? Why do I believe this?
Yeah, like why does that make sense to me? And try and walk through it. And I mean, to be fair, you probably don't need to do this for most things because it's not worth the time. And for most things, it doesn't matter.
Except if you're in the scientific community and you take a lot of pride in your conclusions. I dismiss people that can't spot their own biases.
Yeah, that's
like it's really, it's not intellectually I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually that's good because I was just thinking about people's general lives, right? But
yeah,
what you just brought up is a great point.
Online, like a lot of the people that claim that they're scientists online, I'm just blown back by some of their cognitive biases that they fall for, and this one is a huge one that they always fall for.
Yeah, well, because
keto is not better in the diet world for losing weight, so it's not better for anything. That's a huge conclusion that they come to.
Well, I think it gets back to something we've touched on in other videos where you have pseudoscientific people and then you have the polar opposite, which is the evidence-based crowd. And both camps tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater, where they can't appreciate nuance and context about
things. They're not true intellectuals, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the belief bias because they have a belief paradigm and they're more likely to accept conclusions that align with it and reject those that don't without ever digging in to appreciate the nuance in each of those situations. That's the belief bias at play. And so an example of this could be time restricted feeding, right? Tends to not have any effect, outside of reducing food intake on body composition. But there might be, under specific circumstances, like in someone with prediabetes, it could potentially benefit their health more than eating in a longer time window, right? Or even just the basic context of acknowledging that even if there's no difference in weight loss when calories are equated, maybe it just works for some people because it helps reduce their appetite and facilitate eating less. In which case it's like, yeah.
Well, and I mean, there's a lot of different things that could come into play in that scenario too.
Yeah. Well, it was meant to be a basic example, but it's there's always context and nuance involved. And if you're just rejecting stuff or accepting stuff without ever looking at those variables, then you're doing your belief bias.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff, I'm more aggressive when it comes to that. I'm like, you're dumb. Bye. You have more tolerance about that, and I'm working on it. I think we can all.
I'm working on it.
I am. And I think everyone can work on it, even if they are stuck in their belief biases. And I've already dismissed them as idiots because that's what I do. I'm like, you're dumb. You can't see the errors in your own thought process. Then I don't trust you with anything. That's just my personality. But they can also redefine their belief bias too. They can say, oh, wow, I didn't know I was doing that. I'm going to be more aware of that now.
Yeah. And
Right?
then that way.
And then I won't dismiss them as well.
Won't you? You're going to overcome that anchoring bias we talked about in the previous
Yes.
video.
I am.
Yeah. So, I mean,
We all have things to work on.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so again, the point of this was belief bias. If you have a belief paradigm, you're going to be more accepting of information that supports that belief system. You're going to be more hostile towards or dismissive of information that goes against it. You don't just see this in the scientific community. You see it with politics and
religion. Religion's really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, let's say you take like a really, really hardcore Christian, individual, and you present all of this evidence that the earth is, billions of years old. I mean, that's in their head, that's debatable. And for a lot of us, it's like, but the scientific like method has tested this over and over again, and everything points in that direction. And this is also kind of an area where like you could argue that this is one of the reasons religion kind of came to be, is because people had beliefs, but they didn't have any rationale for their beliefs early on.
So the conclusions were very plausible.
Yeah, when civilizations were first getting up and going, like we didn't know as much as we know now. So they had these ideas, but they didn't have any explanations. It's really, really easy and alleviates a huge mental burden if you just chalk something up to a deity. You're like, why is the sun move through the sky? You know what? Guy's pulling a chariot. Like that. It's like that there. Now I don't have to think about that anymore. I have the answer. Like that's it. We're done. We're done here. It's easy, right? And that's probably one of the reasons why religion came to be to begin with. It was to explain natural phenomena that we didn't have scientific investigation into yet. And you can see the belief bias at play when people started challenging common belief systems like heliocentrism, right? When the Catholic Church believed that everything revolved around the earth, and then you started having researchers like Galileo like argue, well, no, it doesn't. They would like silence, house arrest for the rest of your life. Like these beliefs, no.
Sounds like the current political climate.
They rejected it because, they rejected it because it went against their belief system. That's a belief bias.
Yep.
Awesome.
We can all work on it.
Yes, 100%. Okay, great. I don't know what my little say out is. If you like this video, awesome. That's what we're trying to do. Give it a like, share it with someone who you think might appreciate this content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone.